In this video lecture, we're going to discuss formal proposals and what goes into them. To begin, let's start with the skeleton for the formal proposal standard parts. These standard parts are the front matter, the introduction, the proposed program, qualifications and experience, budget, schedule, conclusion, and back matter. This skeleton I'm giving you is a good all-purpose sort of outline for proposals. It works very well from anything from a one-page wonder to a multi-binder big formal proposal. At the same time, please note that you can adapt this thing as need be. You can cut it down, you can expand it, whatever you need to do. Just note that this is a good general outline. One particular thing I suggest very strongly, particularly when you're talking about a large and formal proposal of the type you're going to be writing for this class, you're going to want to start each major section on its own page. So the introduction should start on its own page. The proposed program should start on its own page. Qualifications, experience, etc., etc. Let's talk front matter. The front matter includes such things as the letter of transmittal, the title page, the executive summary and/or abstract, the table of contents, and the table of figures. There are other possibilities for front matter, but these are the most common, and these are the ones we're going to talk about. A letter of transmittal. A letter of transmittal uses a formal letter layout. You've seen this before. Notice the example at the right. We have some letterhead with a return address, we have a date line or inside address, a salutation, a main body broken up into paragraphs, we have a complimentary close, a signature, and a signature block. You've seen this before. Not a big surprise. What you're going to be doing in the proposal's letter transmittal is you're going to be forecasting what is coming up next. You're also going to use the standard structure to forecast this proposal. Remember the standard structure we talked about earlier this semester? We have the introduction, narration, petition, justification, action, conclusion. So when you write your letter of transmittal, it's going to go something like this. Hello, person. You're reading this proposal, or we have attached this letter to introduce the proposal. Here's what we were talking about. Here's why we're sending it to you. Please read it. Here's why it's a good idea that you read it and accept it. Please hire us. Thanks very much. Me. That's it. That's your letter right there. You want to attach this letter as a separate document. Please note that when you turn in your document for the class purposes here, you're going to include your letter as a page in the big thing. That's because I just don't want to have multiple pages floating around that I have to keep track of. What if you're going to print it out and turn it into a binder? For example, you're going to 3-hole punch it and give it to somebody. Or better yet, you're going to spiral bind it, and then send it to somebody. Would you want the letter included in this thing under the cover? No. You would want to print the letter separately and attach it outside with a paperclip. This is why we call it a letter of transmittal or a cover letter. You're saying, hey, check this thing out. So if the letter comes separated, then at least the person knows that there's a proposal floating around somewhere that they should read. Let's talk the title page. The title page works kind of like this. You always want to include 4 items in any technical document's title page. The title, of course. The audience. Who is this thing for? If you don't specify who it's for, no one's going to read it. Who the authors? Why do we need to know the authors? It's because you need to know who to contact if you want to hire the person or the people. The date. The date is very important when you write a proposal. Proposals are like, well, a good analogy is dairy products. You go to the dairy shelf, you pull out a gallon of milk, you take it home, you put it in the fridge. Is that milk going to stay good for all eternity? No, it's going to stay good for a week or two, and then it's going to get kind of funky. Same thing happens with a proposal. It's good for a certain amount of time, then whatever the problem is, it will change and go away, and your proposal is no good anymore. You always want to have a date in your title page. There are 2 things you don't want to do in a title page. One is include itself in a TOC, and second, give it a page number. The reason being, the title page is like the cover of a book. Have you ever seen the cover of a book have a page number? Have you ever seen the title page of a book put in a table of contents in the book? The answer is no, it doesn't go there. So include title, audience, authors, and date, and don't include a page number, and don't include the title page in a TOC. The executive summary and abstract. These are slightly different things that do different purposes. An executive summary, it is for, as the name might suggest, executives, busy people who don't have time to read your entire proposal. I should mention this, by the way. There will be nobody almost nobody anyway, I'm going to do it, but there will be nobody who is going to read a full formal proposal from beginning to end, particularly if it's a really big thing. It's going to be just specific people will dip into it at specific places. Therefore, for example, the executive summary is going to be for the chief executive who doesn't have a whole lot of time. She or he needs to read this thing, decide, what do I want to do with it? Do I want to reject it straight out of hand, or do I want to give it to one of my flunkies to look into further? This executive summary will help her or him do that. You're going to summarize the entire proposal on one page, maybe two, depending on actually how big this thing is. It could be a full-on binder by itself. So if you've got a 500-page proposal, you might have a 50-page executive summary. In that case, you might actually have an executive summary of the executive summary, but any case. The big point being that you're going to bring it all down, include all the details, all the important details, but just boil them down to their very essentials. You're going to use executive summaries on very long proposals. Again, no one person is going to want to read the entire thing, so get the highlights. Think of it a highlight reel. You want to see all the good stuff. An abstract, on the other hand, is a little bit different in that it will just describe what is the point of this thing. The executive summary has all the details, but the abstract is just the main point. What is it talking about? You're going to use abstracts for short proposals. Because short proposals, somebody can flip through those very quickly and get to your idea. For the document you guys are writing, I'm going to have you do an executive summary. When you write either an executive summary or an abstract and put it in the proposal, you always want to include a running header or footer, maybe both, it depends what your document design looks like, and include a page number. Please note, when we talk page numbers, you probably want to use lowercase Roman numerals for your page numbers in the front matter. Why is that? You want to visually separate them and conceptually separate them from the materials in the main body. So in the executive summary, anything that comes before the table of contents, you're going to have lowercase Roman numerals. For the main body, you're going to start in with the Arabic numerals that we're familiar with. The next thing we're going to talk about is the table of contents and/or table of figures. A table of contents, what it does is it lists the page locations of all the major and maybe the minor sections. You want to also include, make sure you omit, there's the word, omit the table of contents from itself. A table of figures, what it does is it lists all the page locations for figures and tables. Particularly if you have a very large and complex proposal that has a lot of pictures and the like, graphs, charts, maps, a table of figures would be a very, very good idea to include. You can conceivably have a table of tables. That being said, they are fairly rare, but if one is necessary, then you please separate it out from the table of figures. So you'd have a table of contents, and a table of figures, and a table of tables. For the most often general purposes, though, you're only going to have a table of contents. Please note, the table of contents is usually page 0. You will very, very rarely find a table of contents with a page number. Accordingly, you still need to put a running header or footer in the table of contents, though, right? So you've got this table of contents. What is it for? What is this about? Include that running header or footer to help the reader understand and remember what is it that they are reading and where are they. Here's a hint for you. Microsoft Word is really cool. It has a built-in table of contents generator. If you build your document using styles, make sure you use the heading 1, heading 2, and heading 3 styles that are built into Word. You can modify them all you want to, but you can click a couple of buttons. Word will automatically generate a table of contents for you. You can click a couple more buttons and style it to look whatever you want it to look like. But the thing is, if you use heading 1, 2, and 3 styles, you just build one of these things automatically. It'll save you all sorts of time. The main body of a proposal has a couple of interesting sections that we need to go talk about in some detail. We have the introduction, the proposed program, the qualifications and experience, the budget, the schedule, and the conclusion. Let's talk about these. The introduction. What the introduction does is it justifies your proposal's existence and tells what's coming next. So if you look at that little image that we've got there, what is this thing? Oh, it's a crystal ball. What are you supposed to do with the crystal ball? You're supposed to tell the future. Exactly. So when you write one of these things, you want to introduce what is the proposal going to contain from this point forward. You want to tell the reader, why does this proposal exist? What are you writing it about? A little bit of information also about the background. You don't want to go into massive detail here. This is, remember, an introduction just to get somebody's feet wet, remind them what's going on. The focus and scope. How big a proposal is this thing? Are you going to, for example, solve world hunger? Well, gee, that's really big. How about if I solve hunger in the United States? Well, it's smaller, but it's still pretty big. How about I solve hunger in Georgia? Well, still pretty big. In the metro Atlanta area? Still pretty big. In Cobb County? Still pretty big. In Marietta? Okay, then, well, maybe we can start to talk. In the particular area of Marietta, we're going to do something about soup kitchen in an economically depressed area of Marietta. Oh yeah, we can probably get to that. So the big idea here in focus and scope, how big is this proposal? What are you talking about specifically, and how deep into it are you going? Similarly, you want to talk about contents and organization. Tell the reader what is coming up next. What are you going to talk about? What are the major sections? Give them a preview so that they know what to expect. The proposed program. This is the meat of your proposal. You're going to do two big things here. You're going to describe what is the major project and what are you going to do about it. This depends on what you're going to do, will depend on the type of proposal you're writing. If you're writing a research proposal, you're going to say, what are you going to do to research the proposal? If you're writing a goods and services proposal, you're going to say, what are you going to do to actually make the thing happen? Please note, for the thing you guys are writing for this particular class, you all are going to be writing a research proposal. I don't want to know how you are going to go out, find a spot, grab some shovels and start digging. That's not what you do. Your idea here is you are going to get hired for your brains. You can get other people to go do physical work. You are just telling people what to do. So you are going to write a research proposal. For example, this here mangy beast. Let's say that the campus is overrun by feral cats. What are you going to do about this? Well, I am going to do lots of research. I'm going to go to the library and find out all I can about cat biology and cat reproduction and cat living and where they like to live, how they like to live. I'm also going to go out in the field. I'm going to start counting how many cats are there on the campus. Where do they like to live? What do they all eat? What do they, etc., etc., etc. Describe. This is the big idea here. When you do your proposed program, describe what's going on and how are you going to address that particular problem. When you're writing a proposed program, you want to talk about a couple of things. You want to talk about the approach you'll take, what is required, your plan of action. How much information you give here will depend tremendously on whether you're getting paid or not. For example, look at this regal beast. What is this thing? Well, it's a cow. Yes, okay, it's a cow. What do we get from cows? Well, we get meat, we get milk. Ooh, milk, yes. Have you ever heard of the phrase, don't give away the milk? Or why buy the cow if you get the milk for free? This is the idea here. Now, is your audience going to pay you to solve a particular problem? If you are writing a proposal to them and saying, hi there, we would like you to hire us, and if you pay us, we will give you a report, or if you pay us, we will do this service for you. In that case, you do not want to give away the milk. In other words, if you give too much detail, your audience will just say, oh, hey, you know what? That's a really cool idea. Thanks, bye, and they're going to go do it themselves. But at the same time, if your audience is not going to pay you, then you're just going to go ahead and solve the problem in the proposal. Think about the assignment coming up for you guys. You have your audience of each other. Your classmates are your audience. Are they going to pay you to hire them or to hire you? No, they're not. You're just saying, hey, I got this really cool idea for a project. We all ought to work on this together. In this case, you want to solve that problem in the proposal. Show your classmates that, hey, let's do this, for example, this chewing gum recycling program. I got a really good idea. This project could work really well. Check it out. We could look into A, B, C, D. We could investigate all these things. We could find out all this stuff. Well, have you solved the problem? Not totally, but you have found out enough information that you can just go ahead and say, people, come work with me. It'll be easy, and they'll believe you. So, to back up a little bit, when you talk about the approach you'll take, what's required, your plan of action, if you give too much detail about these and you want your audience to hire you, then they will not hire you because they'll just steal your idea. You want to strike a balance then between giving so much information that they can walk away with the idea and giving too little information that they will not believe that you know what you're talking about. At the same time, though, if you just say, hey, let me do this thing for you, will you let me? Well, yes. Okay, great. Then you can go ahead and tell them exactly what you're going to do in all sorts of glorious detail. Qualifications and experience. This section explains why you are the best person, or people, or organization for the job. What subject knowledge do you have? What work experience do you have? Do you have any school training? Did you take classes? Do you have any professional certifications? You know who these guys are, right? They're the Mythbusters. At the beginning of the show, what do they say? They say, don't do what you're taught to see at home. We're what you call experts. This section is where you show why you are the Mythbusters. Why are you the experts? Why should they hire you? What do you know about this? The budget section. The budget section gets mildly complicated. You want to create two separate sub-budgets. One of them is going to be the cost to hire you, that is, you personally or you as your group or your organization, whatever it may be. The second budget is how much is it going to cost to do the entire project you're talking about. You want to separate these things out, and that means separate subsections. So you're going to have, I would very strongly recommend, a major budget section, then a brief paragraph that tells about what is this section, what are you going to talk about in it, a subheading for the cost to hire you, your group, and then the cost, a subheading for the cost for the entire project you're talking about. So let's backtrack a little bit. Let's talk about the feral cats. The cost to hire my group to research this and write you a report will be so much money. We are going to spend so long. We are going to need these particular requirements. It'll cost this much. You go ahead and detail this here. Then, a separate sub-budget. How much is it going to cost to get rid of this feral cat problem on campus? If your budget is too high, then your audience will know, yeah, well, it's going to cost $10 million to get rid of the feral cats. Oh, I'm not even going to hire you in the first place. Doesn't matter if you're going to do this study for free. We know it's just not going to happen. At the same time, what if you say, oh, getting rid of the feral cats on campus, it'll cost $1.99. Are they going to believe you? Probably not. So you want to give a forecast, a realistic estimate of how much it would cost to do the entire project. Remember, the research you're going to do will tell them the details about how much it costs to do the entire project, right? Exactly. So, two separate sub-budgets. One, how much does it cost to hire you to research the problem? Separate budget with basic estimates, not detailed, that's what you'll give them in the full report, but basic estimates of, is this project feasible? Do you think it's going to work? And should they even hire you in the first place? The schedule is very similar. You want two separate subschedules. One schedule, when are you going to deliver the research report? That's one of the big things they want to know about. Second, a subsection talking about how long is the research project going to take. Again, make subsections for each schedule. When will the research report be done? Let them know. Break it into a new subheading. The big project itself, whatever it is you're talking about. Don't give too much detail, because that's what you're going to sell them in your report, but at the same time you need to give them enough detail to show them that, yeah, this is a realistic project. To go back to the feral cat example. If you're going to say, we estimate that getting rid of the feral cats would take 10 years. Oh boy, it takes a long, long time. I don't think they're going to hire you. Oh, we can totally get rid of the feral cats in 2 weeks. That seems awfully short. I'm not sure it's going to work. What if the research, you said the research project, getting rid of the feral cats, would take about 6 months? Starts to seem more reasonable. That shows you have a handle on the idea. Give a little bit of detail, but not too much. The amount of detail for your audience will depend greatly on what they're interested in and how deeply they are into it. Somebody who is really knowledgeable about it, they're going to want all sorts of details because they want to make sure that you've got the details right. On the other hand, if it's somebody who is just an overall manager, they aren't going to want as much detail. You can give broader strokes. It's also a really good idea to include a Gantt chart. That way you'll be delivering a visual estimate of how long it would take you to do the project, or how long do you think that the entire project would take. Our conclusion. This is not the conclusion of the PowerPoint. It won't be too much longer, but at the same time, we want to talk about the conclusion to the proposals. The conclusion to the proposal should be fairly brief. Odds are people aren't going to read it in detail. But you want to remind the reader, what is the problem? Why does it need solving? What are you going to do to solve it? You can repeat a lot of ideas here that you repeated through the entire document. And, by the way, did you notice as I was going through, I repeated ideas a couple of different times? So from the introduction, what is the problem? Why does it need solving? What are you going to do about it? You're going to talk about that in the proposed program, right? You're also going to talk about some of those details in the introduction to the budget section, in the introduction to the schedule section, in the introduction to your qualifications experience. You can copy and paste bits across the entire document. You don't want to plagiarize the entire thing and make it totally repetitive, but at the same time, you can cut and paste, just make sure it all fits together. Let's talk back matter. The back matter can include such things as a bibliography, a glossary, an index, an appendix or appendices. So let's talk bibliography next. A bibliography is a list of cited sources. If you're going to include pictures, for example, you got from somewhere else, where did you get the pictures? Any facts? Quotations? Basically, any information that you did not create or discover yourself, tell us where you got it. Does it matter if you use MLA, APA, AP, Turabian? It doesn't matter deeply. Generally speaking, most academic people, we like to use parenthetical citations at the end of sentences. A lot of people in business don't really like those. They prefer footnotes, so maybe you want to use Chicago style. Whatever. It doesn't matter. The point is, as long as you include a bibliography of things that you took from another source, that is what's going to be important. A glossary. A glossary is a list of complex or unfamiliar terms. For example, in acronyms or initialisms. Technical terms that the author, or I should say the reader, doesn't know. Are there any foreign words that the reader doesn't know? Anything that's going to confuse the reader, put it in a glossary. An index. An index tells the reader where can you find a particular topic. On what page do these ideas appear? If you have a very, very large proposal, then it's absolutely necessary to include an index. At the same time, if you have a fairly short proposal, and the one you all will be writing for this class is only going to be about 6 to 10 pages in the main body, you don't really need an index. Appendix or appendices. This is where it gets interesting. An appendix is any useful information that didn't fit in the main body that you still want to include in the proposal because the person, your audience, might need it. You can be such things as maps, the full text of surveys, big old data tables, samples or examples. Whatever. If it doesn't fit in the main body and it's still useful, put it in an appendix. The deal is, if you have an appendix, you need to refer to it somewhere in the main body. If you don't do that, it's going to be at the very end of your document. No one will ever look at it. You have to tell people that it is there. Similarly, or say conversely, if you have an appendix, you have to refer to it in the text, and if you refer to it in the text, it has to be in the back. It's just like you do for citations in academic papers. You always want to label an appendix with a letter and caption it with a meaningful name. at the example we see here, Appendix C, Sample Purchase Agreement. Okay, great. Do the same thing on your own document. Appendix, whatever it may be, tell us what it is. Please also note that the appendices, appendix is singular, appendices is plural. You want to continue the page numbering. So if you have page 20 is your last page of your main body, then you have next thing is an appendix, that's page 21. Similarly, the running header. Keep going with the running header from the main body. And that's it. So we've talked about what the skeleton of a proposal looks like, how to use it, and how to fill it in place.